The flame caught the corner of the flag first. That's how it always starts with fire, not with a roar, not with a statement, with a small, quiet curl of orange at the edge of something sacred, and then nothing you can do to stop it. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in late August 2021. The security camera mounted on the eve of 412 Sycamore Hollow Road in Cartersville, Georgia captured every second of it in 4K resolution. Crisp, time-stamped, irrefutable. You can see the two of them on the footage, laughing, one of them holding a phone, filming themselves naturally because that's what they always did, the other one flicking a lighter. The flag, a 3x5 American flag that had flown over the casket of a fallen soldier, igniting in under 4 seconds. And then, on the far edge of the frame, you can see a porch light click on. And a man standing in the doorway. Still quiet watching. That man's name was Master Sergeant Raymond Eugene Dillard, United States Army, retired, and he had survived things that would break most people in half. He had survived the Korangal Valley. He had survived an IED blast outside Kandahar that took 2 fingers off his right hand. He had survived the death of his wife of 31 years. He was not going to be broken by 2 people who had 600,000 Instagram followers and the moral compass of a parking ticket. He watched the flag burn. Then he turned around, went back inside, and he made a phone call. That is where this story really begins. Let me tell you about Cartersville, Georgia. It sits about 40 miles northwest of Atlanta, nestled in Bartow County, where the red clay earth runs deep and the summer air smells like honeysuckle and distant rain. It's the kind of town where people still wave from their front porches, where the 4th of July means something, where a handshake is a contract and a man's word is the deed to his character. Sycamore Hollow Road was a quiet street of 9 houses, tucked just off Highway 41 behind a line of old-growth sycamore trees that gave the road its name. The houses were modest but proud brick ranchers and craftsman bungalows with well-kept yards and seasonal flags on the porches, Christmas wreaths in December, pumpkins in October, American flags always on the proper holidays. In the summer of 2019, before everything that happened, the street had the rhythm of a place that had figured itself out. The Okafor family at number 408 let their kids run through the sprinklers until dark. Old Pete Marchand at 416 played Johnny Cash on his porch radio every Saturday morning. The Hendersons at 410 kept a vegetable garden that overflowed into generosity every September, zucchini and tomatoes left in paper bags on neighbors' doorsteps. It was, by every measure, a good street, a street that took care of its own. And at 412 Sycamore Hollow Road, behind a modest American flag and a hand-built wooden porch railing, lived the man who had quietly anchored that street for over a decade. Master Sergeant Raymond Eugene Dillard, United States Army, retired. Born January 14, 1961 in Dalton, Georgia. Enlisted at age 18. Served 26 years across 4 decades, from the Cold War to the mountains of Afghanistan. 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Later Special Forces Group support Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 2 tour in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. 1 classified deployment he never spoke about, not even to his wife. He came home for the last time in 2007, medically retired after the IED blast near Kandahar took the ring finger and pinky of his right hand, and left him with a traumatic brain injury that gave him migraines for the next 3 years. He received the Bronze Star with Valor Device, the Purple Heart, and the Army Commendation Medal with V Device. He kept them in a shadow box in his hallway, facing the wall. He didn't think they needed to be seen, he knew what they cost. Raymond was 60 years old in the summer of 2021. He stood 6 feet 1 with the posture of a man who had never fully left the army. Silver hair, close cropped, a gray beard he'd grown after Margaret died, hands like a carpenter, which in retirement he had become. His garage was a woodworking shop where he built rocking chairs, bookshelves, and small handmade toys that he donated every December to the Bartow County Children's Hospital. The neighbors knew him as Ray. He grilled out on Sundays and let the Okafor kids name his tools. He drove a 2003 Ford F-250 with 190,000 miles on it and a faded 75th Ranger Regiment sticker on the rear window. He had a black Labrador retriever named Patton who was 8 years old and believed he was the mayor of the street. He had one wound that never fully healed, and it wasn't the missing fingers. Margaret Elaine Dillard had died of pancreatic cancer in March of 2019, 14 months before the world locked down and left everyone alone with their grief. They had met at a USO dance in Savannah in 1987. They had survived deployments in distance and danger and 31 years of the kind of ordinary love that sustains a life. She used to leave notes in his coffee mug. He still sometimes reached for his phone to call her. Along the fence line between his yard and the property to his right, Margaret had planted a climbing rose, a pale yellow variety called Peace. She'd planted it the year he came back from Afghanistan. By 2021, it had grown 15 feet along the fence, full and extraordinary in the summer heat. That rose bush will matter later, remember it. Ray lived quietly. He minded his own business. He was, by every account from every neighbor on Sycamore Hollow Road, the kind of man you want next door. Steady, calm, the kind of man who, if you had a flat tire at midnight, would already be walking across the yard with a flashlight before you finished asking. Now, let me tell you about the people who moved into 414 Sycamore Hollow Road in the spring of 2021. The moving truck arrived on a Thursday morning in April. A bright, enormous white truck with Premier Relocation SCRVICES on the side, followed by a pearl-white 2021 Land Rover Defender with California plates and a bumper sticker that read, "Content is King." Old Pete Marchand was on his porch when they pulled up. He told Ray about it later over coffee. "Didn't wave back," Pete said. "I waved. They looked at me like I was the mailbox." Their names were Cody and Brittany Vance, 29 and 27 years old, respectively. Originally from Scottsdale, Arizona, they had a lifestyle brand called the Vance Aesthetic: home renovation, travel, intentional living, and whatever else paid the algorithm. Combined, their Instagram and YouTube accounts had somewhere north of 800,000 followers. Their TikTok was approaching 1.2 million. They had bought the house at 414 Sycamore Hollow Road not because they loved Cartersville, Georgia. They bought it because a fixer-upper in a quaint southern town tested well with their demographic. It was content. It was a backdrop. It was a season of their life they intended to document, monetize, and eventually leave behind when something shinier came along. Cody was lean and carefully unshaven, with the kind of jawline that photographs well and the kind of confidence that comes from never having been told no by anyone he couldn't unfollow. He drove the Land Rover with one wrist on the steering wheel. He called adult men he just met bro. Brittany was the strategist. Sharp eyes, sharp tongue, sharp nails, the kind of sharp that cuts before you realize you're bleeding. She ran the brand's business accounts. She had a ring light in every room of the house by the second day. The first red flag came within 72 hours of their arrival. Raymond had walked over on that Saturday morning the way he did with all new neighbors. Homemade cornbread in a dish, Patton trotting beside him. He knocked on the door of 414. Brittany opened it, looked at the cornbread, looked at Patton, looked at Ray. "Oh," she said, "we're actually doing a no-contact move-in for content reasons." She smiled the way people smile when they're explaining something to someone they've already decided doesn't matter. "You understand." She closed the door. Patton looked up at Ray. Ray looked at the closed door for a moment, then he turned around and walked home. He left the cornbread on their porch, because that's the kind of man he was. 3 weeks into their arrival, the Vance Aesthetic descended on Sycamore Hollow Road like a production crew that hadn't been asked for. Ring lights in the windows after midnight. A drone, a DJI Mavic 3, buzzing over the street at 7 in the morning, filming the neighborhood for B-roll without asking anyone's permission. A Sprinter van, rented by the week, parked permanently in front of number 410, blocking the Hendersons' driveway 2 days running. Jim Henderson, 63, retired high school principal, went over politely, asked them to move the van. Cody Vance, filming himself watering a plant for Instagram, didn't look up. "We're just wrapping a segment, probably like an hour." It was there for 4 more hours. That same week, Brittany filmed herself walking Sycamore Hollow Road for a reel she captioned, "Small town, big dreams, sparkles, loving our new neighborhood in rural Georgia." She did not ask any of the neighbors whose homes, yards, and children appeared in the background for their consent. Raymond noticed all of this. He noted it in the small green notebook he kept on his kitchen counter, the same kind of green Army issue memo book he'd carried for 26 years. Dates, times, descriptions. the habit of a man trained to document everything because in his experience, the truth eventually needs evidence. He hadn't yet felt the need to engage. That changed on a Tuesday evening in May. He was in the garage working on a rocking chair for the children's hospital when he heard it, the drone, again, hovering directly over his backyard. He walked outside. The thing was about 20 feet up, camera pointed down at his property, at Margaret's roses, at Patton sleeping in the yard. He looked across the fence. Cody Vance was standing on his back porch, controller in hand, not even looking at Ray. Ray walked to the fence, calmly, his hands at his sides. "Hey, Cody." Cody looked up, half a second of something, not quite guilt, but a cousin of it, crossed his face. Then it was gone. "What's up, man?" "That drone is flying over my property," Ray said. "I'd appreciate it if you kept it over your own yard." Cody tilted his head, like he was considering whether Ray's sentence was worth the bandwidth. "Dude, it's airspace. I'm not trespassing on anything. It's filming my property and my dog without my consent. I'm asking you, neighbor to neighbor, to keep it on your side of the fence." Cody laughed, not a friendly laugh, the kind of laugh that says you're smaller than you think you are. "Look, man, we're running a business here. This is literally how we make our living. I don't know what they told you in the, army or whatever, but this isn't a military base. You don't get to make the rules." He brought the drone down and went inside. Ray stood at the fence for a long moment, then he went back to the garage. He picked up his pencil. He opened the green notebook. He wrote May 18, 2021, 7:43 p.m., drone overflying my property, filming without consent. Cody Vance, he was warned. Now let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever tried to be genuinely reasonable with someone who has decided you're simply beneath their consideration? Someone who heard your calm, measured, decent request and laughed at it? Drop a comment below and tell me what happened, because I've got a feeling some of you know exactly how Ray felt standing at that fence. The drone kept flying, Ray kept writing. June arrived and the incidents stacked up like cordwood. On June 3rd, Cody Vance parked the Land Rover Defender at an angle that blocked Ray's driveway for an entire Sunday morning. Ray called it into the Cartersville Police Department non-emergency line. An officer came out, knocked on 414, and Cody moved the car. On camera for his story, he called it government overreach and gained 4,000 new followers from the clip. On June 11th, a bag of fast food trash, Wendy's wrappers, a cup, 2 straw wrappers, was found on Ray's side of the back fence. Ray had no way to prove it was intentional. He bagged it, photographed it, and noted it. On June 19th, Brittany filed a complaint with the Bartow County Code Enforcement Office claiming that Raymond Dillard's garage workshop was operating as an unlicensed commercial business in a residential zone. An inspector came out on June 23rd, evaluated the situation, and closed the complaint the same day. Raymond Dillard was a retired man who made rocking chairs for a children's hospital. He charged nothing. He sold nothing. Brittany posted about it anyway. "Neighbor tried to shut down our business. We're still standing. Sparkles neighbor drama, Sycamore Hollow life." 300 people in the comments called Ray a bitter old man without knowing his name, his face, or a single fact about him. Ray didn't have social media. He found out from Pete Marchand's granddaughter, who showed him the post on her phone one afternoon. He read it once, handed the phone back, said, "Thank you, sweetheart," made a note. On July 4th, and this is the one that made the blood pressure rise on the whole street, the Vance aesthetic made content out of Independence Day. Brittany filmed a reel of herself walking through the neighborhood's small flag display. Most households had small American flags in their yards, a tradition going back decades on Sycamore Hollow Road, and she added a voiceover about complicated feelings on the 4th of July and the performative patriotism of suburban America. The reel got 200,000 views. Most of them agreed with her. Some of them quoted it. Old Pete turned off his radio that Saturday and didn't play music for 2 weeks. Ray watched the reel once on Pete's porch on Pete's phone. "She's entitled to her opinion," he said. Pete looked at him. "That's all you're going to say?" "For now," Ray said. He went home, fed Patton, sat in his woodworking shop for a long time. and he made a phone call, the first of several, to an old friend named Colonel Walter T. Briggs, currently employed as a senior investigative agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division out of the Atlanta field office. They caught up for a while. Ray asked about Walter's grandkids. Walter asked about Patton. And then casually, Ray mentioned the name Cody and Brittany Vance and the Vance aesthetic. Walter said he'd look into a few things, as a personal favor. Remember that, it matters enormously later. It was a gray Tuesday morning in late August 2021. The kind of Georgia morning where the humidity sits on your chest and the sky can't decide between rain and just threatening it. Ray was at the kitchen table at 6 a.m. with his first cup of coffee, black, always black, and his green notebook open to a fresh page. Patton was at his feet. He didn't know that Cody and Brittany had had a fight the night before. He didn't know that their channel had taken a hit. A brand deal with a furniture company had fallen through over a contract dispute, and they'd lost a significant chunk of revenue. He didn't know that Brittany had said in the heat of that argument that they needed something big, something that would go viral, something real. He didn't know any of that yet. What he knew was that at 7:15 a.m. he heard Patton bark from the backyard, a sharp, alarmed sound, and then go quiet. He was on his feet before the second bark ended. He went to the back door, looked into the yard. Patton was fine, standing at the fence line, tail low, hackles up, staring at the fence. Ray looked at the fence. Margaret's roses were gone. Not trimmed, not damaged, gone. The entire climbing piece rose 15 feet of it along the fence line, planted the year he came home from Afghanistan, the thing she'd tended every spring with garden gloves and a watering can and a kind of patience he still tried to learn from, cut down to the root. Branches heaped on Ray's side of the fence in a pile, like garbage. He stood there for a moment. The morning air smelled like cut stems and something chemical. They'd used something to kill it at the root. Ray looked across the fence. The back window of 414 was lit. Through it, he could see Brittany Vance, phone in hand, filming. He understood in that moment that this had been deliberate, that it had been content. He did not move. He stood very still, the way men who have been in combat learn to stand when everything inside them is on fire and they cannot let it show. He turned around. He walked to the garage, sat down on the stool at his workbench, put both hands flat on the wood, the missing fingers on his right hand pressed against the cool grain. Patton came and sat beside him. They stayed that way for a long time. Then that night came the flag. The flag on Ray's porch was not a decoration. It was a 3x5 American flag that had been folded in a triangle over the casket of Staff Sergeant Michael Dillard, Ray's youngest brother, killed in action in Fallujah, Iraq on November 13, 2004. Ray had been given it at the burial. He had kept it for 17 years. 2 years ago, he had mounted it on his porch on a proper bracket because Margaret had said near the end that it deserved to be flown. At 11:47 p.m. on Thursday, August 26, 2021, Cody Vance crossed the property line onto Ray's front porch. Brittany Vance stood on the sidewalk with a phone, filming vertically. Cody unclipped the flag from its bracket, set it on the porch railing, flicked a lighter. And that's when everything changed. Because what they did not know, what nobody had ever thought to tell them, because why would it come up, was that Raymond Dillard had installed 6 security cameras on his property 11 months earlier. 4 exterior, 2 with audio. All of them 4K, all of them with cloud backup, uploading in real time to a private server. Every second of what they did was recorded, time-stamped, preserved. Ray watched the flag burn from his doorway. He did not rush out. He did not shout. He stood in the doorway of his home with his hands at his sides and he watched. And when it was done, when they'd laughed and walked back to their house, he closed the door. He sat in the kitchen, he opened the green notebook. He wrote the date, the time, and 3 words. Now we begin. And then he made the call to Walter Briggs that he'd been holding for exactly this moment. Now let me pause here and ask you something. If you think Raymond Dillard was going to walk over to that house and pound on the door, if you think that's the kind of man he was, then you haven't been paying attention. A man like Ray doesn't need to pound on doors. He lets the law do it for him. Here's what nobody knew at the time. Walter T. Briggs had spent 31 years with the federal government. He'd started as a JAG officer in the Army, where he and Ray had first met at Fort Benning in 1989. He transitioned to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division in 2001 and had since built a career pursuing financial crimes. Specifically, the kind that happen when people confuse their business accounts with their personal spending accounts, or when self-employed content creators decide that every luxury purchase in their life is a business expense and forget to keep records that could survive an audit. Within 48 hours of Ray's July phone call, the quiet one, the fishing around one, Walter had run a preliminary open-source review of the Vance Aesthetic, LLC, which had been incorporated in Arizona in 2018 and registered as a foreign LLC in Georgia in early 2021. What he found was not unusual. It was, in fact, extraordinarily common among mid-tier social media influencer operations, but common doesn't mean legal. The Vance Aesthetic had reported gross revenue of $340,000 in 2020. Their Schedule C filings showed business deductions so aggressive they bordered on performance art. The Land Rover Defender personal vehicle, registered to Brittany Vance personally, deducted 100% as a business expense. Their home renovation, totaling over $180,000, deducted as business premises improvement. 2 vacations to Tulum and 1 to Portugal deducted as brand research travel. A $14,000 dining room set deducted as set decoration. The Vance Aesthetic had paid an effective federal tax rate of approximately 4.3% on $340,000 in income. Walter had quietly flagged the account for review in July. By August, a formal audit inquiry had been prepared. He was waiting for one thing, a reason to make it active rather than passive. A triggering incident that would justify escalating from civil audit to criminal referral. On the morning of August 27, 2021, Ray called Walter again. "I have the video," Ray said. He described it, all of it, the roses, the flag, the filming, the time-stamped 4K cloud footage. Walter was quiet for a moment. "Send it to me," he said, "all of it, everything from the cameras." But that was only part of the plan, because Ray, methodical, patient, 26 years of discipline Ray, had done something else in those weeks of documentation. He had contacted the Bartow County Property Records Office and requested a survey review of the shared fence line between 412 and 414 Sycamore Hollow Road. He had reason to suspect, based on a conversation with the previous owners of 414, that when the fence was originally installed in 2009, it had been placed approximately 14 inches over the property line into his yard. The survey, completed in early August, confirmed it. The fence between their properties, the fence Cody Vance had dramatically leaned against in no fewer than 6 Instagram posts and described as "our little boundary from the neighbors," was built illegally on Raymond Dillard's land. The encroachment was documented. The remedy was court-ordered removal. Ray had simply been waiting for the right moment to file. And then there was the flag. Destruction of a burial flag, specifically a flag that has been folded and presented at a military funeral, falls under Georgia Code Section 1611-184, desecration of a burial flag. It is a misdemeanor in the first instance, but combined with criminal trespass, destruction of property, and the documented pattern of harassment, it was enough. More than enough. Ray had also contacted attorney Linda Osai-Mensah, one of the top civil litigation attorneys in Bartow County, 3 days before the flag burning. He'd had a feeling. He hired her on contingency. She had been waiting for the call. You see, folks, what Cody and Brittany Vance never understood about Raymond Dillard was this. They thought they were dealing with an old man who didn't understand their world. They thought veteran meant behind the times. They thought quiet meant harmless. But Raymond Dillard had spent 26 years in one of the most sophisticated special operations and intelligence support environments in the world. He understood systems. He understood documentation. He understood patience as a weapon. He had spent 4 months building a case so clean and so complete that a first-year law student could have won it. Now let me ask you something, and I want you really sit with this question for a second. When is the last time someone underestimated you? When is the last time someone looked at you and decided you were less than you were, and then found out, too late, exactly who they were dealing with? Tell me in the comments. Because the morning of August 28, 2021, a Saturday, warm and golden, the way late August mornings in North Georgia can be, was about to be a very educational day for the Vance aesthetic. It started at 7:15 a.m. The sound of tires on Sycamore Hollow Road, not one vehicle, but several, moving slowly with that careful deliberateness that means something official is happening. A Bartow County Sheriff's Department patrol unit. A second unit, a black unmarked Chevrolet Tahoe with federal plates, a white Chevy Express van belonging to the Bartow County Code Enforcement and Property Records Division, and parked at the end of the block, not participating but present, a news van from the Cartersville Courant Tribune, whose court reporter had received an anonymous tip the evening before. Pete Marchand was already on his porch with his coffee. He'd been told to be there, not officially, but he'd been told. At 7:22 a.m., Linda Osai-Mensah, dressed in a charcoal gray blazer and carrying a leather briefcase, knocked on the front door of 414 Sycamore Hollow Road. There was a pause, then the door opened. Cody Vance was in gray sweatpants and a faded Patagonia hoodie. His hair was unstyled. He was holding a hydro flask. He looked at Linda Osai-Mensah the way people look at things they don't yet understand are dangerous. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Linda Osai-Mensah, representing Raymond Dillard of 412 Sycamore Hollow Road. I am serving you with a civil complaint for property damage, criminal trespass, and harassment, as well as a notice of encroachment and court-ordered fence removal relating to the survey completed August 3rd. She held out an envelope. "You'll also want to be aware that the Bartow County Sheriff's Department is present to execute a criminal complaint related to last Thursday's incident." Cody stared at the envelope. He did not take it immediately. "Also," Linda said pleasantly, "I believe those gentlemen would like to speak with you." She gestured toward the black Tahoe, where two men in dark jackets were now walking toward the door. The jackets said IRS Criminal Investigation on the back. Brittany appeared behind Cody in the doorway, phone already in hand, habit, reflex, the only response she had to any situation. She looked past Linda at the police cars, at the federal agents, at the news van at the end of the block. "Are you filming this?" she said reflexively, into the street. "Not me," said Linda Osai-Mensah, "but I believe the county recorder's office is documenting the fence removal." She smiled. "That starts in about 20 minutes. The criminal complaint for flag desecration and criminal trespass was filed by the Bartow County District Attorney's Office at 7:45 a.m. Both Cody and Brittany Vance were served. They were not arrested on the spot, first offense, misdemeanor charge, but they were issued mandatory court summons and informed that a failure to appear would result in a warrant. The IRS agents did not arrest anyone either. They served a formal notice of criminal tax audit and requested that both Cody and Brittany Vance surrender their financial records, electronic devices, and business documentation within 14 business days per a federal magistrate's order. And then the code enforcement officer walked to the fence line with a survey stake and a pair of markers, and he marked, in bright orange spray paint on the grass, exactly where the legal property line was. 14 inches on Cody's side of the fence. "Court order for fence removal," the officer said, posting a notice on the fence post. "You'll have 30 days to remove it at your expense, or the county removes it and bills you." Cody Vance stood on his porch in his sweatpants and watched all of this happen. His hydro flask hung at his side. He did not speak. He did not film. For what was possibly the first time in years, Cody Vance had no content to make out of this moment, because this moment was making content out of him. The total civil complaint, property damage to the Rose Garden, destruction of a burial flag, criminal trespass, harassment, and related damages, was filed in Bartow County Superior Court for $612,000 in compensatory and punitive damages, plus attorney's fees. The IRS criminal referral, once the audit was formalized, would eventually determine that the Vance aesthetic owed $186,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest for the 2019 and 2020 tax years. That brings the total, if you're keeping count, to $798,000 in legal and financial exposure. From a flag, from a rose bush, from a green notebook and 26 years of discipline. And Raymond Dillard. He was on his back porch, in a wooden rocking chair he'd built himself, drinking coffee from a blue enamel mug, Patton asleep at his feet. He was not watching the street. He was not watching the police cars. He was looking at the fence line, at the bare earth where Margaret's roses had grown, and he was already planning what to plant. He did not go out front, not once. He didn't need to. By noon that Saturday, the official vehicles were gone. But the neighborhood was awake. The Ackefer family stood on their driveway and watched the fence removal notice fluttering from the post. Jim Henderson stood with his arms crossed, nodding slowly in that way retired principals do when justice arrives on schedule. Pete Marchand, bless him, put on Johnny Cash. Ring of Fire, if you want to know the specific song. Nobody went to 414's door to check on them. Nobody left food on the porch. Nobody offered comfort. The Vance aesthetic went offline that Saturday. No posts, no stories, no reels. Their comment section, previously moderated to cheerful positivity, started filling with things the algorithm couldn't scrub fast enough. Someone had screen captured Brittany's performative patriotism reel. Someone else had found the public records for the civil suit, court filings, or public documents. By Sunday evening, the story had been picked up by 2 regional news blogs and 1 mid-sized true crime subreddit that specialized in public records stories. Monday morning, a brand partnership with a kitchen appliance company worth $45,000 per their public media kit sent a termination email. Tuesday, a second brand followed. Brittany posted a statement on Wednesday. It was 8 paragraphs of third-person grievance dressed up as accountability, using the phrase learning and growing 4 times. It received 12,000 angry comments and 300 supportive ones. It did not mention the flag. It did not mention Raymond Dillard by name. It described the flag burning as a moment of poor judgment during a difficult time for our brand, a sentence so tone-deaf it became its own meme within 6 hours. The Land Rover Defender sat in the driveway. The ring lights went dark in the windows. The drone never flew over Sycamore Hollow Road again. And that fence, that illegal 14-inch encroachment of a fence, came down on day 28 of the court order, because Cody and Brittany paid a crew to remove it rather than wait for the county to do it. Ray watched from his kitchen window as the posts came out of the ground, one by one. He didn't feel satisfaction exactly. He felt something quieter and more permanent than that. He felt the air where the fence used to be. The Vance aesthetic folded as an active brand within 4 months. The IRS criminal audit resulted in a formal settlement in March of 2022, $186,000 in back taxes, interest, and penalties. The criminal referral was resolved with a civil agreement, no prosecution in exchange for full payment, and a 5-year supervised filing compliance agreement. Their accountant was separately sanctioned. The civil suit filed by Linda Osai Mensah settled out of court in January of 2022 for $430,000, less than the $612,000 originally sought, but enough. The settlement was not confidential, per Ray's specific instruction. Cody and Brittany Vance listed 414 Sycamore Hollow Road in November of 2021, 4 months after they'd arrived, 3 months after the flag burned. They sold it at a loss in February 2022 and returned to Arizona. Their combined social media presence, which had peaked at 2 million followers across platforms, sits now at a fraction of that, largely inactive. The Courant Tribune ran a feature in March 2022, Cartersville veteran wins 6-figure settlement against social media couple. It was picked up by 3 Atlanta area outlets. Ray declined every interview request. The fence came down permanently. With the 14 inches restored to his property, Ray extended the garden bed. He ordered bare root climbing peace roses, the same variety from the same heritage nursery, in October of 2021. He planted them that fall. By the spring of 2022, they had begun to climb. By the summer of 2023, 2 years on, they had grown back nearly to their original length. Pale yellow, extraordinarily full. The neighbors started calling it Margaret's Garden again. The house at 414 Sycamore Hollow Road was purchased in April 2022 by a young couple, David and Amara Ackefer, relatives of the family at 408. David had just completed his first deployment with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. Amara was a pediatric nurse. When they moved in, Ray was at the property line. No cornbread this time, just coffee and a handshake. David noticed the shadow box on the hallway wall, the medals facing the wall. He didn't ask about them, he just nodded. Ray nodded back, and they understood each other completely. Let me tell you what I want you to take away from Raymond Dillard's story. Not the lawsuit, not the IRS audit, not the $798,000 in exposure or the dissolved brand or the empty house at 414 Sycamore Hollow Road. Take away this. Raymond Dillard never lost his temper. Not once across 4 months of deliberate provocation. He never raised his voice. He never crossed a single legal or moral line. He answered cruelty with documentation. He answered arrogance with patience. He answered the burning of his brother's flag not with rage, but with a phone call. And that patience, that deep, almost geological patience that 26 years of service had built in him, was the most devastating weapon in his entire arsenal. There's a kind of person in this world who looks at a quiet man and sees weakness, who looks at calm and sees fear, who looks at a man who doesn't immediately react and thinks they've won something. They haven't won anything. They've just given that quiet man time to be thorough. Margaret's roses grew back. That matters more to me than the dollar amounts, though those matter too. They grew back because Ray planted them again, because he didn't give the ground over to the people who tried to take it. He reclaimed it the same way he reclaimed everything, slowly, deliberately, beautifully. Never mistake a quiet man for a weak man. Never mistake patience for permission. And never pick a fight with a veteran who knows the difference between a battle and a war. Raymond Dillard knew he wasn't fighting a battle, he was fighting a war, and he fought it the only way a man like him knows how. He won it before the other side even knew it had started. God bless you, Ray. God bless every Margaret's garden that grows back. And God bless everyone watching who has ever been underestimated and then proved every single one of them wrong. Subscribe if you're new, and in the comments, tell me about your Raymond Dillard. Tell me about the quiet person in your life who finally had enough. I read every single one. We'll see you next time. This story is inspired by real events and public court records. Names, locations, and specific details have been changed or dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals is coincidental.